just heard, oh my God, it's like Elvis, bro. It's like Elvis, y'all. We've just heard that she's on her way. She's on her way. Yeah, but if I cut it, Courtney, now we're just talking about my V-neck. This is great content. If I just cut it, then it like will just keep stretch. It just won't. Just make a deeper V-neck. Target? That might be the problem. Get my V-necks from Target. I would pay $25 extra for this shirt if it just had a better V. Isabel joined. Dun dun dun. Isabel, request to go live with me. OTSL joined. Voice of Earl. Here we go. View. Oh. Isabel. Everybody is, oh my gosh. Amazing.
Hi.
Amazing. Oh my, your hair looks great. Get out of here.
I like brushed it. I just recently bought like all of me and my other gray counterparts that little spray that like if you spray you'll get rid of some of your grays. I tried like one little spritz and it was my fingers are like super black right now. It's really weird. So I'm gonna be doing that when I have more time.
I see. It's to like fix the roots or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I tried it like on these little roots, like, oh, these roots there.
Honestly, I don't see anything. I just see gorgeous flowing hair. I think it's fine. Listen,
it's good. I'm here.
Isabel.
Hey.
Welcome to Hook, Push, and Pray. This is the sign we have. It says Hook, Push, Pray with Isabel Leonard.
Oh my God.
I'm very happy.
I love it.
You are. Thanks. We're all doing homegrown stuff, you know? So I am a huge fan of yours. Obviously, like I told them before you got on, like, I don't think you need any introduction. I mean, you're Isabel Leonard, but for those who don't know, Isabel is a star mezzo, and she sings all over the world in every major house that you've ever heard of. And she is just not just that, but a great colleague, wonderful person, superb actress. And to me, I said like, great, you just got to get over it. I'm going to blush over you for a second, but like this, like you sort of encapsulate the idea of the 21st century diva, hell of a singer, even better actress, and approachable as they could all get out. Like that's the idea. That's the, so I applaud you for that. So.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Bravo. Virtual class.
Yay.
So usually I go back to the beginning with people and we talk about that, all that. So, we'll do a little bit of that, but I really want to get into sort of, cause you have your hands in so many different baskets. I mean, you've been in Vogue for Christ's sake. So like, I want to get into that at some point, sort of 21st century opera where we fit in. But,
sure.
I found it so interesting. I'm about to alienate and offend all of your friends that live in New York. You were born and raised in New York.
Mm-hmm. I
you
sure was.
So normal. And so it's like, you seem Southern to me. I mean, I'm from Alabama. Like, you seem you're very sweet and very kind, but like, I don't know. You just don't seem like a New Yorker to me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think those of us who were actually born and raised here probably have a different sort of perspective on the city, maybe. I've been here for so many years now, I've pretty much lived here, since I was born here. So I think that, I don't know. I think maybe perhaps when you're born here and you're raised here, depending on like where you're raised and your family too. I mean, come on, how you were raised is going to affect the way you feel about the city or how you project the city in your day-to-day being. I never needed to get hyped up with the rhythm of the city. And I guess because it was already part of my rhythm, so it never felt like, I guess, when, the first time I noticed how busy New York really was when I left for 2 years, and I lived in Chicago for 2 years, and then I came back, and I had slowed down my walking. It was amazing. Even in just 2 years, everything had slowed down quite a bit.
You moved to the third largest city in the country, and you're like, oh, this is way slow. Like you didn't go to Omaha.
Like, oh no, I can't do that. Sorry, I love people in Omaha.
Slowed you down. I mean, that's
but yeah, sure. But that goes to show, I think, like how fast everything runs here. I mean, like I walk generally. I actually haven't gotten back up to speed since I came back a year and a half ago. But I walked so fast everywhere. I mean, so fast. You know, they always say here it takes you like about a minute to walk a block, which is true. And I would say for New Yorkers, it's more like 45 seconds. And we just like go, 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 go. And then I came back and it probably takes me like a minute and a half to walk a block now.
Yeah,
Because I'm just like
yeah.
la di da di da. You know?
Right. And you find yourself like looking up at the buildings and being
Yeah.
swept
And
up
I'm
in
like,
the
oh, I
space.
love New York. I missed New York, you know.
But like,
But I do think it
but like,
depends on where you're living in the city too. And I would say all the people that I know that were raised, you know, born and raised here are pretty chill. And it
yeah.
could
I
just
mean,
be because we're in it, you know.
I think this is so fascinating. One of my best friends is Theo Hoffman, and he went to LaGuardia like you. Then he went to
Right.
Juilliard like you know, and it's just like
Right.
every window that you've ever studied opera out of, you could see the Met. Like, what is that? What is that do to one's psyche? Like, you must be ready to handle anything.
Um, you know, it's interesting. Like, so uh, I do remember, oh, and on top of it, my teacher's window in our lesson studio at Juilliard looked right over to the Met, like right at the Met across
Like
that
in
little
that little
pond.
hole where like Lincoln is, like where the
Mm-hmm.
restaurant is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So right over Lincoln, and her studio windows looked straight at those. So every now and then she'd be like, just sing over there, sing so they can hear you. So I remember I'd be in lessons thinking like, okay, sing so they can hear you. But it wasn't like I ever thought I would be singing there, and I never thought I wouldn't be singing there. It just wasn't something that at the time in school that I put a lot of thought in. I was in school, so I was like, I'm here to learn. I gotta, you know, I can't get ahead of myself. There's no reason to get ahead of myself, and I'm not a big person of like putting dreams and goals in front of me in that kind of a way. I don't like to disappoint myself. So I tend to just kind of work steadily forwards. And then as things come up, I'm always very pleasantly surprised. um, but yeah, I mean, high school was crazy
You're
because I went to high school
so.
right around the
How are
corner.
you so regular and temperate? You're temperate. Like that's.
Ooh, oh no.
Oh,
Wait, I
here we
lost
go.
you.
We're back. I'm back.
Sorry,
Um.
come back.
Yes, but you were just so, and that's what everyone says. I mean, it's so. A lot of people are sort of nice in this thing, but like we're crazy
Yeah,
artists and we're running around the world all the time, and like I
yeah,
run super hot. Like
yeah.
my wife is a genius for learning how to deal with me and put up with me, and like I'm always blown away by people. Like if I'm so, I mean, I really believe this. Like I'm so grateful that I went to a very small undergrad in Alabama and then, went to Rice instead of going to Juilliard, which is a good school, but it
Right.
wasn't in New York, and it was like, I needed to
Yeah,
be, and I did the LA program and not the Met program. I needed to
right.
be warmed up in that way.
Yeah,
Because I think, the city would have just absolutely eaten me alive. And I would have like, if I can't imagine even now having a lesson like having a lesson staring at the Met, even though I've sung there before, it doesn't even matter. It's like
yeah,
it's this huge
yeah.
place, and for you to be able to deal with that, that's
I mean, I mean, I also think it has a lot to do with kind of like how I was raised, and my mom is really, she's a little hard in general. Like, so she's very pragmatic about things, and she would always say to me, even in school, like high school and going into college, she'd be like, "Well, you don't really know where you stand." It was always that kind of a thing. It's like you don't really know where you stand in this pool that you're in, and then the next pool that you go in, you don't know where you stand yet for a little while there either. And so it was always extremely humbling, but it was also just very. It wasn't like there was never like this pinnacle, that one had to achieve. It was the process. It was you have to kind of continue to succeed at each step of the process. And then you just keep on moving forward, and then hopefully you're doing something that you love at the same time, and and then success is, I guess, different for everybody. And um, I mean, now I would say now uh, it's almost like it's almost more nerve-wracking now than it was when I first started. And I think that's because you created a standard. You know,
Yeah.
you create a standard, you create expectations.
Yeah.
And I think that's harder. It's one thing to live up to expectations of your own that you haven't told anybody. Um, it's one thing to meet those expectations and not to meet them, but you're really only just doing it for yourself, or, you know,
Right.
either succeeding or letting yourself down. But it's
Right.
one thing to have like 15, 16 years behind you, kind of setting up expectations and standards that you now sort of feel the pressure to meet. So there is definitely like phases in the career, you know, where in the beginning there's nerves for certain reasons, and then later on in the career, like 15, 16 years, there are different kinds of nerves, and it's these nerves of like, I have to continue to produce high quality work, not because not just because I set these expectations and all these people kind of expect it now, but because in me personally, I can't stand the idea of not doing better each time I do something. And
And
so it's
you're to
really,
that
it's a
point.
lot of stress.
No. Yeah, I mean, you're to that point in your career too, which is where we all sort of ideally like, which is where we all want to get to, where like you are, you are a project doer. I always say if you're an opera singer and you get to say I have a project, you're doing
Mm,
really well. Because most of
hmm.
us are like,
Yeah,
where's the next gig? Where's the next
right,
job? It's a very
right.
different transition. And so, you know, I don't want to speak for you, but I imagine that this to be true, where you're sitting down with presenters, sort of saying, what is the things you want to do, the directors you want to work with, you know, sort of like you're not doing cattle calls in NOLA. That was, you know, 10 years ago. And so
Right.
that
Yeah.
that becomes even more difficult, because I always said, oh, that's what I want, right? I want to become a project guy. But like, if you have Christopher Alden put on Dutchman for me, and it's opening night at the Met, it's going to be expected to be incredible, you know. And you
Right.
have Yannick conducting.
Right.
Like, I better come through.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly. Yeah. There's definitely a lot more. And again, the more you work with people too, they have expectations of you. And granted, so in some ways that gets easier, and in some ways you know, you feel like you're more responsible for more and more people. I mean, like Marnie, because that was on yesterday, so it's really very
yeah,
fresh in
bravo,
my
by the way. And
mind
everyone
right
listening
now.
to this, go watch Marnie. It's free for like 2 more hours or something. But like, go watch it. It's amazing.
Yeah, it kind of brings me. I've been in this very sort of strange state watching it, because it was very. She was a hard character to live with for that period of time, but
That's put it lightly.
yeah, she was
Darn.
difficult. I mean, she was so interesting. She was difficult in that you had to go through so much in order to play her. Like being in her shoes, you know, over and over and over again took a toll on me psychologically a little bit,
Yeah.
and so it took me like a year to kind of clear her out of my system, and
Do you
vocally and
think,
everything
ask
too.
you a question that everyone's been
Yeah,
dying to ask, and you don't have to answer this because it's your
yeah.
character, but do you think that Mark raped Marnie?
Well, I think that you have to read the book.
Okay.
And I will always go back to the book, because for me, that's the kernel of the story, and that's where it all
Yeah.
started. And unless you choose, I think, in storytelling uh, to stray from that
Right.
storyline and specifically say we're telling a different story, then that would be one thing. So we were during that time, last was a year and a half ago. That was really when the Me Too movement really was like
Yeah.
really starting, and it was a really big thing. And I remember one day in rehearsal, I said to Chris, I said, you know, I said we need to talk about this scene. We hadn't quite staged
That's
it yet.
Christopher Maltman, who was
Yeah,
playing the role
sorry,
of Marnie. Yeah.
Christopher
No,
Maltman.
it's
Yep.
okay.
And I said, you know, we need to talk about this scene. I was like, because I don't want it to look like he is raping her.
Right.
Because that's right now, that's going to be a very difficult thing. I said, and I don't think that any one person in this show should take on the character title of villain, complete villain. And I think that in that time
Right.
period, particularly, he would have ended up in that one scene really come across, I think, as a full-on kind of like bad guy villain. And I think that they're complex. The characters were so much more complex than that. And this opens a whole other conversation, which we don't have to get into, of the Me Too movement and all of these situations that we've, you know, been
Yeah.
privy to stories and to experiences. And there are definitely situations in which there is an absolute black and white line as to what was correct and what was not.
Yeah.
And then there are the other situations, and I would say that the situation for Marnie, for example, would be somewhat of a grayish line. Now, I mean, that could be really people could fight me on that, but I think for the purpose of the storytelling for Marnie, in that scene, we definitely talked about it a lot, and I said, let's try to find a way of physicality that can come across obviously as aggressive and sort of forceful, but that there is definitely a moment where he sees her horror and her terror, and he stops. And you see it in the screen. He stops and he looks at her and he looks scared, and then she gets up and she goes. So there is a level, because the truth is, and it's funny, even my son watched it last night. It was a little bit old for him to watch, but he said at the end, at one point, Marnie, he's almost 10. So it's like a lot for him, but he gets it. And at one point, I can't remember I say she, Marnie, she was saying something, and he yelled at the screen. He's like, because you love him. Which I had, of course, I had sort of explained it to him, but he really understood, because
the biggest truths.
Yeah, and that was the whole thing with that story, is that she was so destroyed that she could not identify her love for him, and she certainly couldn't express it, and there was no way she was going to do it anytime soon. And so there had to be a little bit of this sort of desire to be close, but the fighting of it, because she was so mad at herself all the time, and she felt like she was a horrible person, and therefore she didn't deserve anything good whatsoever. And that's what she explains right at the end of the story.
Yes.
Anyway, sorry, this is all a little bit more about Marnie, but
no, go for it.
Yeah, but it was a really interesting scene. But that's sort of my long answer to your question.
No, that's great. So I sat with Damon for one of the shows live.
Uh-huh.
And we watched it, and it was, I saw the whole thing. It was you were impeccable. We could talk about the piece at another point, sort of from a compositional standpoint. Just to be wildly, completely honest, which is, it wasn't my favorite in terms of how he matched the text with the music. However, that aside, I think what you do that not a lot of people do, and this ties in with the sort of 21st century diva theme of this. I watched the HD today, from start to finish, riveted. I used my toddler's entire nap time for it. And
they slept that long?
Sorry, of course, you've had it hard enough. But so I am so blown away at how right you got it in the theater where I saw it live, right? Where it's a subtle acting job, Marnie. It's tough. It's not Trovatore. But also how you got it right on screen. And so I was so blown away. I got a lot of that nuance in the theater. And then I got even more in the HD. So the way that you, and obviously Christopher is an extraordinary actor and a beautiful singer.
He's a great partner. He was a great scene partner. We had an amazing time, and every time we were on stage together, I felt very safe. And I felt even more entrenched kind of in our scenes. And we both felt the same way, and we had a really great time working together. It was a great, truly a great collaboration.
So when they came in to talk to you, okay, you show up, opening night, boom, gets off, done, we nailed it. Bravi, I looked beautiful, 15 costume changes, nailed it. Then, you drink your wine, whatever. So what show was the HD filmed on?
I think it might have been the last one, actually, in our case. It's usually one of the mid to last performances. I think ours may have been the last, I think.
Okay.
I don't remember.
You walked in the theater. Tell me about that energy of an HD versus a midweek show.
Sure. I mean, so I was lucky that I've been in a bunch of HDs before. I have already at that point kind of hosted a couple, so I sort of feel what it's like on both sides. I get it. I understand sort of what's going on. And the slightly different energy in the room, because there are more people on the side of on the set, because they're all of the camera crew as well. So there's a little more just human kind of energy around you, as well as if you're, if you have good eyesight, every now and then you will see the cameras, especially the one down at the footlights. There's one that runs kind of at the bottom of the stage, and that one kind of catches people, especially if they're lower on the stage or just more up front. But I would say that I've always, from the beginning of the HDs, I've always gone with the same idea in my mind, which is I'm not necessarily acting to the camera or to the theater. I'm just inhabiting this character and allowing it to be kind of this complete feeling. And then hopefully that will obviously translate into the screen, and hopefully that will also translate into the theater.
So then so is Marnie, because of Marnie's, we want to believe that every character is so complex, but the truth is some opera characters just aren't written that way. And there's not really source material to draw on. This Marnie is deep and rich and it's endless. I mean, for Christ's sakes, there's a Hitchcock movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like
he liked
deep.
it. I mean, it's psychological thriller to the T. Yeah, it's great.
So do you sort of approach that differently? You know, do you sort of lean into the character and that kind of thing on stage? Is it the same with Dorabella? Or
for me it is. Yeah, for me
okay.
it is. For me it is, because for me, like, the best thing about being on stage is finding yourself lost in the character that you're in. You know, you get your shoes, your costume, and all of those things on. And then when you're on the stage, you're in this world. And granted, you've practiced enough to know that you can't obviously face up stage. You have to face the audience, you know. So your kind of physical habits on stage are tailored to the fact that you are live in a theater. However, you're still very much a part of this world that's in front of you.
Yeah.
And so I find myself really happiest when I am very lost in that world, and that sort of the blackness that I see on one side of me, which is the audience, is like another wall of the room. It's just that it's a very open wall, and it actually happens to include thousands of people. So that's, so I feel like I just try to keep things like that the same for me, so that I'm not shifting gears and I don't get myself riled up for an HD versus something else. Because, and the other thing too is, we always say this, is that yes, the cameras are there, and yes, people are watching from all over the world, but there's still a live audience. And those are the people, and those are the humans that are giving you energy back. And I've always felt that my first responsibility is to them, right? So, I mean, that being said, again, I just try to keep it kind of the same each time, the same steps of the process.
So listen, you prepared the shit out of Marnie. It's so beautiful. It's so perfect. The music's really hard. It's really, really difficult music. It's very different, even than like normal hard music. Like it's not, our ears aren't used to it because there's so many new compositional techniques and textures in the orchestra. So like, it's all good, and I hear you. That's what we all want to do. We want to be locked in, and we're locked in. Now, what if I'm a bar and a half behind? Like, how does your brain get out and get back in? And how do you flip that switch so quickly?
I don't know, practice. I was really good at being wrong for Marnie. I was wrong all the time. Like, honestly, if you were to sit down with a score, even for the HD, you'd be like, that's not right. That's wrong. Oh, that's wrong too. No, that's not quite right either.
I'll send out a link to the score for everyone to watch.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, my ice pack. I just realized that I was like, wait, my ice pack. I burnt my hand. I was cooking, and sorry. I'm holding onto an ice pack. Oh, it was just stupid. I had a pan on the stove that I hadn't actually turned the fire on underneath, but the pot next to it was on. And then I went to hang up that pan, and I touched the bottom of the pan, which was cold, but then I grabbed it by the rim to hang it up on a rack I have on the ceiling. And the rim was hot because it was near the other one, scalding hot. So I basically burnt the bottom.
Here's the thing.
Anyway.
Butter. Cold butter is good.
Ugh, really? Okay. Maybe I'll try that. Okay. This is my third ice pack that I'm melting. It's like
Do you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? That's playing through the pain. And that's why she gets paid for big bucks.
No, but in a way, it's sort of similar, because you just kind of go, well, I can't deal with this right now. And I would say that with the mistakes, I survived, I wouldn't have done the show without our prompter at all. And it was I always say it was a duet. And it was anyway, it was terrifying. It was a terrifying show. But I feel like, I don't know, I feel like you just get used to kind of making a mistake and learning how to not judge it and just move forward.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that's sort of, again, opera is filled with these lessons for life. Like, you just, literally, you're on the train, you can't go back, go through. We gotta just keep going. There's nothing else we can do. And so I think I think that that is something that I love about opera, and I think is undervalued. Is that, especially now with all of this that's going on, we're having to, you know, pivot on a dime, and we're having to, you know, become
Right.
directors of photography, recording engineer. We're having to do all of this overnight.
Right.
And I think what
Right.
we're learning is like opera singers are kind of dope, and they have a lot of different skills. And so that's what a rehearsal room prepares you for, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it parlays well into real life.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true. You just kind of have to be like, oh, okay. Oh. We have to
Um,
still keep on going.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, I am so curious as to how we move everything forward. Like you're
Mhm.
involved in projects with Marnie. You're very active on social. You're very sort of like pulling the curtain back and being like, here I am. This is how I work. This is what I do. And I think that's amazing. And that's why I was so touched by the photos in Vogue, because they were so sort of stripped down and so real and so honest. And so, you know, what do you think about like, I have an idea of what you think, but what do you think of like the people who say, and there's merit to this, like we should not be opening it up that much. You know, Renata Scotto would show up in clothes. She would change into rehearsal clothes and then change back into her good clothes and leave that. You know, like that sort of
Mhm.
diva mystique is kind of helpful in a way. So like,
I mean,
what?
I think to each their own, to be totally honest. I mean, and also the thing is like I open up certain things, but I'm not opening up my home or my private life or my things that I consider not to be a part of my job, or not, certainly not to be a part of the public part of my job. Um, I mean, you know, I think people are very interested in process. I think some people are very interested in process,
Yeah,
and for those who are interested, they can see these kinds of things and enjoy even listening, even if they're not learning about it, you know, they're just enjoying the process and hearing how people think about their craft. And I think there are other people who would rather not, and so they are very welcome to not listen. And you know, it's sort of, there are going to be lots of different kinds of people, and I think that you know, if a singer wants to keep their process to themselves, that's, you know, great for them. And if they don't, that's also great. It's like I don't really spend too much time worrying about it. And I think if people are so, I would be curious to ask somebody when they say you shouldn't, you know, show this part of your
well,
process or whatever. I'd be like, why? What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid that we would be showing our weakness, or showing mistakes, or showing that we are not perfect singers? Because nobody's a perfect singer. I mean, I know some really, really great, practically perfect in every
right.
way singers.
A lot
Um,
of a lot of people would say you're a
you
perfect
know,
singer.
no, I definitely would say I'm not. But like, but the thing is I think that we are all very human and we're all very real. And I don't think it distracts from seeing people do their craft on stage when they have honed it so well. I think knowing, and here's the thing, like, unless you're next to that performer or artist or whoever they are every day of their life, you're not getting all of it. So even if they show you a coaching for 20 minutes or a masterclass or a rehearsal, you haven't seen it all. You haven't seen
Yeah,
the 10,000 hours they've put in. You haven't seen their personal life. You haven't seen the things that affected them to their core. You haven't seen, you know, the stories that they bring up in their mind in order to get to a certain place with different characters. So you're never really going to know a full picture of any one human. So there's always going to be, I think, a magical surprise when you see people on stage and them doing their craft, right?
yeah.
Um,
I just think
so I
you know,
think again, it's to who am I to each their own, really.
totally. I
Yeah.
think you know the counter argument to that is because we're in total agreement, which doesn't make a very good, just doesn't make a very good conversation. So to take the other side, just for the sake of it, but no, I think there is some merit to you know, to each its own is fine. But then what if it starts to become expected? Like what, you know, the bar is set by the bar setters. The people underneath then have to follow that bar in order to get to it. So it's some,
They
so there's
may,
a,
well, but they do or they don't, right? Because those bars, as we know with the arts, I mean, come on, the arts, music, fashion, everything like that, that bar is constantly moving,
sure.
constantly moving. It is fluid. The whole point, the whole reason we have trends in fashion and fads is because that bar is moving at all times. And I think the best, think about the artists that you love, whether they're actors or musicians or dancers or fine artists or whatever. A lot of them continue to evolve throughout their lives, right? As they grow and as they grow older, they're evolving in their craft, and maybe they make a right turn here and a left turn there, but they're always just working on their craft. And whether they show you part of it along the way or not, I feel like those that I love the most, and I think about actors,
Yeah.
'cause I'm kind of always watching them, but that you watch them evolve, and you watch them evolve because of the pieces they choose to do or that they're able to do, and
Right.
how they express themselves in each of those characters. And if you're watching, like, you can see probably some of their life experiences, and you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, maybe is there a bar, like, if all of a sudden everybody in the opera world, like all the companies said, we have to watch, we have to film you at one point in a rehearsal and you have to sing. I would also be the one to be like, I don't really feel like it today. Or
Yeah.
I don't really feel like this particular piece is something I want to show my process in, because maybe I'm struggling a lot and I don't feel like this is the time to show that particular struggle. And I would say, let's find another struggling moment that we can show. I think
Totally.
there's always room.
And
I think
I
there's
would
always
say,
room.
totally. I would say to, especially to young singers listening to this, I think it's so interesting to use the actor actress terminology. Like, Reese
Yeah.
Witherspoon is one of my favorite follows on Instagram. She's so active.
Mhm.
She's always cooking cookies and shit, and I love her so much. She is incredible. And,
She's so
and
cute. I
that
love her.
works for her. That's what she wants to sort of share with the world. And then you have like Daniel Day-Lewis, who literally hides until he does his next masterpiece. And I think that, like,
Right.
that's what ultimately we want to find. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of young singers feel like, I this has a negative connotation, but it's not meant to. But like, I whore myself out on social. I'm everywhere all the time. I have the feeling of like, you can't be on it enough. Like, oversaturation isn't a thing in the internet because people scroll
Right.
so fast. So like,
Right.
that's my personal mentality. And I also like open it up, and I'm a big oversharer. I always have been. So damn be the
Right.
internet's going to stop me from that. Never. So
Right.
like, I think you just have to find sort of like where you're at. Now, was it
Yeah.
super weird one time when someone sent me a screenshot of me and my daughter on my open Facebook page and was like, "Oh, you and your wife made such a beautiful daughter. You guys should make another one. You two kids are better than one." Like, this whole thing about how we should not have a single, like, that shit happens. Fine. But like,
Yeah.
that's part of the thing, And so I think,
Well, and here's the thing, you always say, like, you make a choice, there will always be reactions and consequences. So I always say to people, before you do something, especially on the internet, or when somebody says, can I take your picture, or can I take a video with you, or can we take a video of you, you have to just think for a second, truly,
yeah,
how much of this do you want out there at all times and forevermore? Because
yeah,
that's what we're dealing with right now. And so there is a level of, I think, protection as well as vulnerability, that you can find a good balance between the two, but you do have to kind of take a second to answer the question, so that
yeah.
you're really asking yourself first, what am
It's
I comfortable with?
it's like what you said Epstein told you. What makes Renee special is that she stays after every single show and
Mm-hmm.
she's signing every single autograph. And now listen, if you're a young singer, you're like, oh, that sounds incredible. But what you don't know is like once you got a show that day, the next day you have a rehearsal, and the next day after that you have a recital across the other side of the country. So
Right.
that does take something out of you, but it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and also, I mean, if you think about it, you're also in those situations. There are cases in which, you're dealing with people who are a little bit difficult, and it's not the most comfortable situation sometimes to be in, depending on how many people are there or who's around or how you deal with those situations in general. So there's a lot of there's a lot of consideration to be put into those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think I get a shit ton more leeway than you do as a woman in those cases.
Yeah.
Like, anything you do, you are right on the verge. And my wife, who's a singer as well, like, we talk about it all the time. Where like, she's right on the verge of being called like overdramatic or a bitch all the time. Like all she has to do is
Right.
one thing that I wouldn't even think twice of doing. They'd just be like,
Right.
"Oh, he's such an intense artist."
Yeah,
And it's just
you
like
know, that's really true.
crazy.
It's unfortunately still a thing. And as you know, like I've always been pretty even keeled, especially, you know, I'm not an even keeled person all the time, but it's just that when I'm out and I'm working and I'm professional, I try to be really even keeled. And there are like maybe count on one hand the times that I've been upset or frustrated. And I can guarantee you that I come home and I go, but that's the only thing they're going to remember now.
Yep.
You know, and it's true, and it's really unfortunate. You know, it doesn't leave a lot of room for self-expression, but
No. Which is
but
the irony,
yeah.
right? That's all you do.
Right,
That's why when
right,
like I live in Germany, and I am way too big and way too loud to live here, but they damn sure applaud really good when I get done singing Enrico. And
right.
it's like you can't have I can't sing like that and do that without going into the grocery store and screaming about them having watermelon for 10 minutes. Like they had watermelon, and I'm from Alabama. I grew up pitching watermelon. I couldn't believe they had watermelon, and I was telling everyone in my garbage German, like I can't. I when I was a kid, and they like don't know how to handle that, you know.
That's hilarious.
And so like,
How do you even say watermelon in German? I have no idea.
I don't know.
Wassermelone, Wassermelone.
Yeah,
Ja,
Wassermelon, bitte,
sieg.
bitte, bitte, yes. I was like, gross, bravo.
That's so funny.
Listen, I know you got to sort of get out of here a little bit early, so I just want to sort of end with this question because it's one of my favorite questions to ask. Where were you? Tell me about this story when you got the phone call that you had won the Big Tucker.
Oh my God, where was I?
Oh, you remember? You have to remember. 2013.
No, I'm a goldfish. I'm the worst when it comes to remembering. Like, I remember some things really well and some things I don't remember so well. And it's usually because maybe I was in my house, and so that's like that's like a too often kind of a situation
Yes,
versus
very
like I
true.
was on a bike or something, you know.
Right.
Damn, where was I?
While you think about this, I'll say this because we didn't really
Yeah,
get to it. Your timeline is incredible when you start to map out the career. I know when you're in the middle of it, it
thanks.
doesn't feel like it. It feels like what's the next gig, but like
Sure.
your timeline is fascinating. So it sort of covertly says you made your stage debut in 2007, but like you made your Stefano debut at the Met in 2007, and then just
Hmm.
6 years later you win the Big Tucker. Like that to me is like really impressive. Like that's
Thanks.
like is that something that you talked, and again share as much as you want to or not, but like do you talk sort of to at that point you're singing well, you've won a lot of awards as a young artist, whatever, you're moving forward and you start your career at 25, 27, whatever, and you start your career, then is that something that like were you talking to Epstein or whoever was helping you at that time, sort of like thinking long term, or was it just sort of like
No,
let's get gigs and go?
no, I mean, at least, so for me, so I was in my master's, I was doing my master's at Juilliard, and that was when, I think it was after my second year of master's that I went to Music Academy of the West,
Yeah.
Marilyn Horne's program out in Santa Barbara. And, um, and that's where I met Matthew, and that's where Matthew was like, I want to manage you. And I said, okay, can I think about it? And, and then we started working together and we sort of shook on it. And then what he started doing was basically mapping out the first decade of my career. And he had me singing, how did it happen? So about a year later, or maybe a little less than a year
By the
after
way, just to say,
that summer,
Matthew Epstein is a major, like a demigod agent who still
he
does a
is,
lot of consulting, and he has a whole
yeah.
lineage of agents under him. He managed Renee Fleming. He managed this other
Hmm.
great mezzo named Isabel Leonard. Like that's who.
And Frederica von Stade, and
Yes.
yeah, he's been instrumental in so many careers, and he's a lover of music. He loves singing, and he's a real advocate for the art form, and he's smart, you know, and he's bossy and pushy, and he's amazing. And I always
He's
like to tell him
so
he's
darn
kind of
good.
like he's kind of like my godfather, and we fight about things now because I'm finally confident enough that I can actually fight back where I never felt like I could before, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I got a few years to go before I'm fighting back with him. He
oh
usually
yeah,
just
no, it took
emails
me
me
like 12.
at like 2 in the morning, and he's like, "Do these things," and I'm like, "All right, man, cool."
Yeah, yeah. No, you just say, okay. Yeah,
Right.
okay. Um, no, so we started working together and he planned things out and I had to do a recital, which was the sort of prize from the summer
Yeah.
program competition that I had won. And at the recital, at the end of the recital, Matthew came up to me and he was like, "Oh, good job, good job." And that's my imitation of him.
That's a good impression.
And he said, "Do you want to know who was here?" And I was like, "What do you mean who was here?" And he's like, "Well, I invited some people." I was like, "Uh-oh, who did you invite?" He's like, "Well, I invited Peter Geld." And I went,
Cool.
I was like, well, really?
Cool.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you did not tell me beforehand.
Fine. Awesome.
And then Peter really took a chance on me as a young singer, and he hired me to do Stefano and Romeo and Juliet. Whenever that, I think it was either 5 or 6. Is it 2007? Because I think it was 2006-7. I think because we did it 2 times.
September of 2007 is
September
what it says
of
on your
2000.
Wikipedia page.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, but that makes sense. No, wait. 5, 6. Oh no, that makes sense, right? Because I would have done my master's
Research.
in
I do
4,
my research,
5.
Isabel. You're not getting me today.
No, it's more like I have no idea. 4 or 5, no, 6, 7, whatever. Anyway, who knows?
High school in 07.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because I was 25. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Point is that's how I did. But he had me sing Stefano, for example, in Atlanta beforehand to sort of get my sea legs in it a little bit before I went to do it at the Met. And he really,
you just have to come out and like sing really well.
I know, and it's funny. It's one of those random things where, you know, and here in Atlanta, I remember, and I was a young singer in Atlanta when I did this aria. I was on stage with the entire chorus. They were all there watching, so I was singing to people, and I wasn't on stage alone. And then of course I get to the Met, and they're like, so you're going to be by yourself. Maybe throw a couple, throw your shoe here. I was like, I'll throw my shoe. Yeah, great, I can throw my shoe. But you're going to be by yourself on stage. The curtain's going to come up, and you're just going to be sitting there by yourself. I was like, so basically, you're asking me to audition for a live audience.
Did you do
like.
that production with the big turntable in the middle?
Yeah.
And you're on a rake. So you're on a rake, you're by yourself, then you got to do a dagger fight. That's great.
Yeah. I have scars from all the dagger fights. The first time I did Stefano with long épée swords, and then a dagger from this one from the Met too. But those are fun. I mean, once we got to the fight, I was like, I did the aria, I'm done, thank God.
You were like, the sea came out, ball.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh my God, okay.
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't want to keep you any longer because I told you I'd get you out of here at 45.
That's all right. It's great.
Yeah, I think I speak for everyone, obviously, when I say that I am so into everything you're doing. I think you are an excellent singer, but you also just bring the art form to a new level, to a level that we should all aspire to. So that's so dope, and keep it up.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. That's so nice. You're so good at this. Thank you.
Oh, stop. Okay. Well, go to your next appointment. Keep that hand butter on the hand.
I know. Look, it's already melted. You see what I mean?
That's because your hand's so hot.
I know. It's this one. It's all bubbly now. It's all bubbled up.
Whelped up, and then you're gonna have. Oh, this is hot. Let's keep talking about this. Your hand is gonna just whelp up and melt away.
It's crazy how when you burn yourself, like that spot of my hand is still really warm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been icing it for like over an hour. Oh, that's so stupid. It's so stupid. I hate it when I do that.
Amazing.
It is. I agree. It is. I'm just glad it's smallish.
All right. Yeah, you're gonna be fun, and you don't have to do dagger fights anymore. You don't sing pants rolls. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I never do ever.
Yeah. Bravo.
Oh my God. Thanks so much, my friend.
It was good to chat with you. Thank you so much.
All right, you too. Okay.
All right, bye.
Bye.